This time, it's the 2021 Toyota Corolla Hatchback. And no, this of course is not a supercar, maybe the furthest thing from a supercar, but I'm genuinely excited to be driving this today for a couple reasons. First and foremost, this is the manual transmission option, which there's not too many cars offered in manual transmission anymore, and this one has some slick features specifically for the manual transmission, which we will get into. And number two, they have sold more Toyota Corollas than any other car in the world, period. Over 44 million
100 billion
Toyota Corollas have been sold in the world, and that just goes to show how popular these cars are and how important this car is to the Toyota brand. Now, I find the sedan styling of this car to be rather boring, kind of blends in with a lot of other vehicles, but this hatchback version completely transforms it for me. Look at this shape. What an awesome shape. And one of the other cool things that they do is offer some cool color options. So this one has the two-tone package, as you can see right here, with the black roof or the black roof line, and then a different base coat on the bottom. You can get this in some different colors that really stand out. There's a blue color that really pops with this car, and with the black roof, I think it looks absolutely amazing. This one is the magnetic gray metallic, so a little more subtle on that distinction between that black roof line and the regular base coat, but overall still a really good looking car. Love these wheels, love the design. LED headlights in the front, and in the back you have this weird bulbous style hatchback thing going on. It's just such a unique looking car, and really the only thing that I'd say I don't like about the looks of this car are these what are completely phony exhaust finishers in the back here. There is nothing going to these dual exhaust finishers in the back here. The back seat is actually rather surprising. Not from a legroom perspective, the legroom is pretty tight back here. I sit pretty far up despite my height, 6'1", and that's where the driver's seat is currently at. Just enough legroom, but actually the headroom is where I'm most surprised. I've been in a lot of cars lately where my head hits the ceiling, Kia K5, Acura TLX, and that's a bummer to me, being a little bit on the taller side. So if you have taller passengers, the fact that the legroom is a little bit tight is a concern, but at least you don't have to worry about headroom. Hopping in the front, I need to be sure I don't hit my leg on this protrusion here, because funny story about that, I saw another YouTuber complaining about hitting his leg on this, and I laughed and I thought, oh, that's so dumb, like how could you do that? And then the first time I got in this car, I proceeded to blast my leg.
I started blasting. Bang!
I don't know why it sticks out so much, and it sounds dumb, but I literally hit my shin on this and it hurt really bad. A little bit of a complaint, but you only do it once and then you'll never do it again because it hurts that bad. As you can see, the design is very basic in here, but I don't consider that a bad thing. It's very simple and easy to use. A Toyota Corolla is about as inexpensive as you could get, but it feels nicer in here than a super cheap car. Now, there is still a little bit of cheapness to it in certain places. You can see the center console moves quite a bit, but given the price point, it is to be expected. But I will say, even though there is a little bit of movement in some of this stuff, there are absolutely no creaks and rattles in this thing. So when you take it for a drive, it actually feels solid. And I think most importantly, it feels like it's going to hold up. It feels classic Toyota. Now, so many of the Toyota products come with a standard safety suite. Now, the Corolla is definitely included in that. So you get things like lane departure warnings, adaptive cruise control, or even blind spot monitoring, things like that. And this car, it all works pretty well. And it's all pretty much operated right here on your steering wheel. Speaking of the steering wheel, nice simple design, and the shape and size is really good. Nice diameter on the wheel. Let me turn on the gauge cluster here. You kind of have a combination of both digital and analog going on here. So most of the gauge is, please stop yelling at me. Okay. Most of the gauge is all digital, as you can see these blue lights in the backgrounds of the gauges, but the needles are physical, so that's kind of an interesting touch. Moving to the infotainment and HVAC, it's all very well thought out, and it's all super simple to use, which is exactly what you want. Physical buttons here for everything for the HVAC, including knobs. And also, speaking of knobs, you get knobs for the volume button, which is really nice, the tuning button. Thank you so much for giving me these simple things. There's so many cars that don't have these physical knobs anymore, which is such a pain. And then, you have all your basic menu items on the sides here. So even though this screen resolution is pretty old and looks a bit dated, it does have Android Auto, it does have Apple CarPlay, and that's something new for 2021 is the Android Auto portion. Heated and cooled seats as well that work pretty good with just this toggle switch. Basic once again, but effective. All right, let's take this baby for a drive because that's what's most important. One thing I forgot to mention during the interior tour is the seats. These seats are fantastic. They punch way above their price point, I would say. They're nice and supportive actually, but still wide and still comfy, nice material. Once again, I think they're gonna hold up because that's one thing that I've noticed is a big differentiator in these Toyota products is they tend to hold up really well. I want to talk first about this manual transmission because that's one of my favorite parts about this car, even though if you are interested in an automatic version, stay tuned because there's still plenty of other upsides to this thing. But this manual, the clutch take-up is super, super light, maybe one of the lightest clutches I've ever experienced. And I would say the only downside, everything else with this manual is amazing, which we will talk about. The only downside is there's not a lot of feel in the clutch pedal. And that's a bummer because this car handles so well. The clutch pedal itself is super light, but when you start to let off, there's really no feeling of that friction zone. And otherwise, I would say this is the perfect car to learn a manual transmission in. And I still think it is. Even without having that feeling of the clutch pedal, it's still such a good car because you get all these things that are useful to people who are new at driving manual transmissions. One of the hardest things when learning to drive a manual transmission, I'm going to press this IMT button, which I have no idea what that stands for, but intelligent manual transmission, I guess. But when I do that, and I won't hit the gas here, but you'll see what happens when I try and change gear here. See how it revved the tachometer there, or the engine? So what that does is rev match your downshifts and upshifts for that matter. So if you're not smooth at operating manual transmission, this will do it for you. Not only that, one of the other scariest parts when you're driving a manual transmission is that you start to roll back when you're on a hill, right? And people that are not good at kind of letting out the clutch can freak out sometimes when they're rolling backwards. I'm gonna turn this off since I'm gonna turn the IMT off because I'm a professional. But when it comes to rolling backwards when you're new at learning a manual transmission, this also will hold you. So if you depress the clutch and you're on a hill, as things go flying in here, it will take care of that for you and it will hold you on that hill so you don't roll backwards, you don't roll into the car behind you. So it has these things, and these are not new. Like, these are not completely new to the industry. There are other cars that have had this for a long time, but what is new to me is that it's in a cheap version of a car, because these are things that you typically only find in more expensive cars. This is not something that you typically find in a sub $25,000 car. So that's what's really cool about it. And if you're interested at all in learning a manual transmission, this would be a really good car to do it in, because you get these, I'll call them safety features almost. And the gear stalk, or the shifter itself, I should say, is fantastic. The throws are a little bit long, but super positive engagement. It's very light, very easy to shift. Once again, going along with, this is the perfect car for not only somebody to learn, but even if you wanted to use a manual transmission on a daily basis and deal with traffic, you could do that in this car because it's light enough and it's easy enough to be able to do that. So I can't speak highly enough about the manual transmission experience in this car. And actually, it is a lot better than many cars that I've driven in the past. And speaking of, look at this. It's a classic slow car fast mentality. No, this is not a hot hatch, but as we start to get into the dynamics of this thing, there's sort of a scale here where there's basic economy driving experience on one end, and then you have the hot hatch experience on the other, where it's super fun to drive, still has some practicality to it. And this car is somewhere, of course, in the middle. It's by no means a hot hatch, but it's more hot hatch than it is like just economy shitbox. So I already talked about, I think the build quality is pretty good for the price point, and it's more fun than you would expect. It's not that fast, of course, 168 horsepower from this 2-liter naturally aspirated engine, but it's still fun to wind out. The engine doesn't make a horrible noise. As far as 4 cylinders go, it could be way worse, so it's not too bad. And the whole revving out thing is nice. It continues to build and build and build power. It doesn't fall in its face like some, super high-strung turbocharged 4-cylinder engines. And because it's a Toyota product, you just feel like you could wring its neck all the time, and it doesn't care. It's just gonna last forever. It's genuinely a surprise to me. And what I will say is, look at this. I mean, it's not quick, but it's not slow by any means. It is completely adequate and can get up and go. Relatively light car, probably just under 3,000 pounds with this manual transmission. I know it's just over 3,000 pounds with the automatic CVT. And you can still get that car because what I'm noticing here is this suspension and the comfort level of this vehicle is way above its class. And we can thank the multi-link rear suspension for that. A lot of these cars in this segment, think of the Mazda 3, they have gone to a torsion beam because it's basically because it's cost effective. And also for packaging reasons, you can get a little more storage space with the torsion beam rear suspension. But in this car, you have a multi-link rear suspension. And you can tell that it makes a big difference when you are going through the twisties. This car is actually fun to drive. And once again, while it is by no means a hot hatchback, it handles well. And a good sign of a good handling car is not only the way it goes through turns, but also the way it deals with uneven pavement. And that's once again where the multi-link rear suspension shines. So even if you're someone who doesn't care about driving fast or care about twisty roads, you will appreciate how well this rides, because most cheap cars feel cheap in the riding department. They feel crashy over bumps, they feel unrefined, and this feels like a much more expensive experience than it is. So I will say bravo to Toyota on that, on sticking with the multi-link rear suspension, not cheaping out with the torsion beam rear. It's such a fantastic little car. Now, it is to be said that there is some noise, vibration going on in here. It's not the most quiet car at speed. So that's, you can't get away from that in this price point. So keep that in mind. But even so, by no means a cheap overall feeling car. And you can see I just continue to wring this car's neck. The steering is super light. Has a little bit of body roll. And it keeps yelling at me for my lane departure, which I need to turn off because that is mad annoying. But the nice part is you get the safety suite. You can turn things on, you can turn things off. The adaptive cruise control, I've said before, I use all the time and I'm a huge fan of. And in the Toyota products, it's quite good. So that's great. Great package. Great package. They have done a good job here, and it's no surprise really, right? Toyota Corolla, they've sold 1 million of these, well, more than 1 million, more than 44 million actually, And there's a reason for that. The Toyota engineers know what they're doing. They know what people want. And this is such a good basic package. It's perfect for someone who's going to commute, which is exactly what you're going to use this for. And it's going to last forever. That's the biggest thing to me is if I'm going to buy a daily commuter, there's so many cars that for fuel economy reasons, they're switching to turbocharged engines. Not for me. I want a basic, naturally aspirated engine that is just going to last for eternity. And that's exactly what this is. So once again, bravo to Toyota. Thank you for letting me have a go. I've super enjoyed it, even though it's just a Corolla. With the manual, it really spices things up, and it makes it a fun-ish car to drive. Not a hot hatch, but leaning in the hot hatch direction. Eat, Sleep, Drive TV on Instagram if you want to follow me in between episodes. Guys, if you made it this long in the video, would appreciate it if you hit the subscribe button and the bell so you don't miss further videos that are coming out. And I appreciate you guys watching as always. I'll see you on the next video. Peace. No understeer. What a good little car. Except for that lane departure warning. Shut up.